Hello, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. Today we're going to start with a quote. Each generation doubtless feels called to remake the world. Mine knows that it will not remake it, but its task is perhaps even greater. It consists of preventing the world from destroying itself. These words were said by Albert Camus as he received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1957, indicating the timeless aspirations of the youth for change across history. The word youth paints a very diverse group in a single brush, but perhaps that is what is needed now, to get closer together, to face shared urgent crisis from wealth inequality to corruption, shrinking space for free expression to environmental breakdown. From Kenya to Serbia, Nepal to Myanmar, Togo to Turkey, young people are speaking up and reacting to a boiling pot of issues to move their societies forward, uniting people across social, economic, and political divides. And they face backlash for doing so, for speaking up. And we need to connect over our stories and struggles across borders, and that's why we founded PEN International's new Young Writers Committee and Tomorrow Club, where we work to organize young people and amplify brave young voices around the world, continent by continent, to connect peers near and far, form a community of solidarity, alongside our older colleagues, sharing strategies, as well as local and international networks built on PEN's 100-year history. This is a correlation of human dignity against rising correlations of autocracy. I am Ege Dundar, the youngest board member at PEN and project lead at Tomorrow Club. You can find us at tomorrowclub.world. And today we have three bright and brave young voices, Zoya, Nedim, and Fatoumata. Before we get to questions, I want to share some from their biographies. Nedim is a Kurdish journalist and poet, Nedim Turfent, born in 1990 in Gever city of Kurdistan in the far east of Turkey. Throughout his professional life, Nedim focused on peace and human rights. In 2015, he published a video showing police officers mistreating Kurdish workers while shouting, "You will feel the power of the Turks." Following this, he received death threats from the Turkish police, while at the same time being awarded a journalism prize for this report. On May 12, 2016, the police arrested Nedim and attempted a fake execution in custody. It was only due to public pressure that his murder was prevented, and the following day he was imprisoned on charges of terrorism. A year later, his trial began, in which his journalistic work was the only evidence. All the witnesses stated that they had been forced under torture to make incriminating statements against Nedim. Despite violations of rights, he was sentenced to 8 years and 9 months in prison. In prison, Nedim wrote for various media outlets, including the German newspaper Taz, about human rights abuses in prison. For this, he was awarded the Prize for Solidarity and Courage in Turkey. Organizations like Amnesty International and PEN International launched campaigns for his release. His first poetry collection, Kuş Aynası, was published in Turkey, while his second, Über Mauern, appeared in Germany. After 6 years and 7 months of imprisonment, Nedim was released on 29 November 2012. Even after all this, he continues his brave journalistic work, but was once again pressured by the police, and in December 2023 he was forced into exile in Leipzig at the invitation of the ECPMF program for endangered journalists. Zoya Miari is a Palestinian-Ukrainian peace ambassador and storyteller. Her life journey has given her a unique perspective, having experienced 2 wars and becoming a refugee twice. Through these experiences, she discovered the transformative power of storytelling and the ability of individuals to shape their own narratives and the world around them. To share this vision, Zoya founded Waves to Home, a global storytelling movement aimed at changing the world through personal and collective stories. She's currently writing her first book and sharing her story as a message of hope and inner freedom. She aspires to become a positive psychologist to help others create meaningful lives despite the traumas they've been through and guide them towards healing. And last but not least, Fatoumata Sissi Ngom is a Senegalese and French writer, an economist and an engineer. She's a member of PEN Club France. She was born in Dakar and lives in France. She moved to Paris for a master's degree in public policy and development economics from Sciences Po Paris. She wears many hats: scientist, writer, artist. Her first novel, Le Silence des Totems, The Silence of the Totem, the powerful themes of restitution of African piece of arts and African that was stolen during colonization, African spiritual traditions, and women's power. In 2020, she published in Zulma Editions a short story called The Tragedy of the Horizons about climate injustice and environmental crime in developing countries. She co-authored with Senegalese thinkers and economists a report called New Vision for Senegal's Transformation. In her day job, she writes policy recommendations to governments in both the OECD and developing countries on development cooperation, climate issues, and gender equality. She also is the founder of an NGO called Alchimie et Morphose Africain. Sorry about my non-existent French. Okay, I want to start with you, Zoya. When we spoke about this panel, you raised a very important point that when it comes to free expression, internal challenges like shame and fear matter as much as external challenges like censorship and prosecution. As much as young people are reacting to corruption of states, there's also a moral rot, a corruption within. I always say the vitality of the shell disguises the rot within. You said, I want to address the shame we carry, that it's a cycle, it's a part of the systems we live in, and people feel a lot of shame and fear for speaking up. What do you think are the roots of this shame, and how did you guide yourself out of it and now help other young people out of that loophole?
Thank you so much, Ege, for having us here. Hi everyone. My name is Zoya, and I'm a storyteller. And for me to explain myself, I usually tell stories. So that is what I will do right now. I remember myself as a child. I come from a very interesting background. I don't know if interesting is the right word. My dad is Palestinian. From my mom's side, my grandmother is Ukrainian and my grandfather is Russian. And I grew up as a Palestinian Ukrainian in Lebanon. So I grew up in a Palestinian refugee camp for the first 15 years of my life. And in that reality, we grew up in a single room for my whole family. I lived there with 7 members in one single room for the first 15 years of my life. And in that refugee camp, I could not understand the violence that we had. I could not understand why from time to time we had bombings, shootings, and so on. And I grew up not understanding my community. I never felt that I belonged to that community. And to add to that, in that single room, I remember myself that I needed to pass my exams. And because I never found space in my own house, I had to study in the bathroom at times. And I was very ashamed for that reality that I went to the school and I was so afraid to tell my friends the reality from where I come from. I was very ashamed to tell them that I lived in a refugee camp, yet alone tell them that I lived in a single room. So this question of where do you come from was a nightmare to me as a child. And as I grew older, I started to understand my community. I became more compassionate, and I understood that my people are actually not violent. They are oppressed. And what we lived is generational trauma. My grandfather had to leave Palestine. He was forced to leave his home in Palestine in 1948, and that's why he came to Lebanon as a refugee. And with that generational trauma came the shame that I carried my whole life, and even guilt, because I felt that I was not Palestinian enough, because I was not struggling the struggles that the Palestinians were struggling in Palestine. And fast forward to 2021, we decided as a family that we will move to our second home to Ukraine because of the situation in Lebanon with the explosion happening in Beirut. So we eventually moved to Ukraine, and we had a happy few months. But not until the full-scale invasion in Ukraine began in 2022. That was another nightmare to me and my family, because that meant that we needed to escape the war for the second time, because we had already escaped as children the war in Lebanon, and we moved to Ukraine. But something changed this time. As we were escaping the war from Ukraine, I remember on the train, my mom looked at me and said, "Zoya, we should sing." And we all started singing Ukrainian folk songs. And as we sang together, I felt this inner resilience. And I thought to myself, hey, we have this inner resilience that no one can take away from us. And in that moment, I knew that I had a choice to make, whether to become again a victim in life or to become a warrior and a fighter. And I think when I came to Europe after Ukraine, with that mentality, with that attitude that I am a victim of two wars, but I refuse to become a victim in life. With that mentality, I started to shift the story that I tell myself. And I understood the power of storytelling, not only about the story that I tell the world or the story that I share with everyone, but rather the story that I tell myself. And that's when I started reframing and rewriting my own story to look at my own story from a more resilient perspective rather than a victim perspective. And that's when I started sharing my story and recollecting the shattered parts in my own story. And that's how our work in Waves to Home started, to create safe spaces for other refugees, migrants, displaced people, and also indigenous communities to reclaim the narrative that we tell ourselves before sharing it with the world. And from here, like, shame becomes more like, it's more transformed into power. And it's also told that shame dies when stories are told in safe spaces. And this is the experience that I have lived.
That's so inspiring. Thank you for sharing. And you are also, as you mentioned, half Ukrainian and half Palestinian, which puts you in a place where double standards are often applied, right, to the Palestinian side and the Ukrainian side. The latter has been somewhat more welcomed by the world. The former one, let's say governments, the former one was shunned and dehumanized in a way. And as a Ukrainian, you are the perfect victim. As a Palestinian, you somehow associated with terrorism. Why do you think this is so? And how do you resist the notion of these perfect victims? How can we get over the fact that we apply the same values in the same way only to those that agree with us?
Thank you for this question. This is a very important question, and this is what I've been living not only since the genocide in Gaza started, but rather also my whole life, because I remember when we escaped the war in Lebanon in 2006, as a Ukrainian, my mom and my siblings, we were able to get evacuated to Ukraine. But as a Palestinian, my dad stayed behind. And since then, I started to question how could a single document dictate how a whole family could be really separated. And I lived this like ever since I came to Europe as a Ukrainian refugee. I was welcomed by the world, and I'm not used to that, honestly. Like, that was a really positive, good experience to me, to which I'm very grateful, don't get me wrong. I'm super grateful for all the support that we got, and we actually got hosted by a Swiss family in Switzerland, to whom we are very grateful. But this is something I also learned, that the way we were treated as Ukrainians, this is the same exact way that other refugees, whether my Palestinian side or also Sudanese or people from Congo or Yemen, should also be treated the same. And I can talk more about the double standards that I have lived and I have felt. Other than being welcome, it's also the language that is being associated. And we talk about the power of storytelling, the power of words, but we also should be aware about the risks of using the wrong words, because storytelling could be also used as a weapon against the reality. And this is what we felt, and this is actually how the genocide in Gaza has been justified somehow, because of the dehumanizing language that has been associated with the Palestinians. Let's say, for example, my Ukrainian side, it's always seen as a hero. When it comes to my Palestinian side, it's often associated with terrorism. And let's say when we talk about the situation in Palestine, oftentimes the media agencies call what's happening as Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but there is no such thing as a conflict when there's the oppressors and there are the oppressed, when there are colonizers and there are people who are colonized. So it's not a conflict. We need to name it for what it is. It's a genocide. And also people who are dehumanized and being referred to as the children, instead of saying that they are children, we say they're minors. Or when Palestinians are killed, we say that they're dead, as if like there has been a natural disaster that just killed them, without naming who killed them and without saying that it's killing and it's not just death. So this is the dehumanization that my Palestinian side has been living, and we need to be very much aware of this, because with this dehumanization, this is how these cycles of violence and genocides continue.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. We'll come back to you as well. Now I want to quickly move to Nedim. I just want to, first of all, say I'm so glad that you're here. We spent years writing letters to each other while you were imprisoned, and it's amazing to have you here and in Germany. And of course, in Turkey, you faced a whole system of autocracy, from its media to its police, just for doing your job as a journalist. And this system in Turkey is really protecting the few wealthy people in Erdogan's close circle. And if you speak out about any of these, you are silenced, prosecuted, and marginalized. And the press in Turkey is really under immense pressure now. Against all that you experienced, how do you feel is your role as not just a journalist but also a poet to respond to this situation? And how did you find the repercussions and fear of writing about speaking something, speaking up about a news story? How did you come up with the courage to do so against this massive power structures?
Hi again, and everybody. Above all, I'm so happy to be here with you. Uh, Actually, the authoritarian Erdogan regime has turned into the country into a prison for journalists, but not only for journalists, for everybody who raises their voice against the corruption, the injustices of the government, of the state, of the economical power that working with the government, uh, against the destruction of nature. So when you start your writings or speech against the government and their common powers, they will start to put you in prison. But not only in prison, there are lots of different kinds of oppression in Turkey, especially. For example, they will put you in prison. They will detain you but release you with under surveillance for a long time. At the same time, they will put you in house arrest for a long time. So there are different kinds of judicial way of following you to frighten you to speak, to write in the government. And I think it's not the speciality of the Turkish government. All the authoritarian regimes in the world, across the world, are using the same methods to silence the opposition, or to silence the youngs, or to silence the journalists, the poets, the writers. But I think we have a different responsibility against such dark powers or such dark regimes in the world. So, for example, in Turkey, it's not just when you share a too short sentence in your social media. In the morning, Turkish police can raid your house and break the door of your house, and you will find yourself in prison just for two social media showings. Or when you are wandering in the streets and somebody is extending a microphone to you and asking about economical crisis in Turkey, and if you speak as critical, then the dark face and the cold face of the Turkish state will find you sooner or later, I can say. But as journalists, as poets, as storytellers, as the people who hold the microphone and who hold the pens, we should raise our voice, because we are representing different kinds of society. And if today we stay silent as journalists, as writers, as poets, I think tomorrow the authoritarian regime will be more powerful, and then we need more strength and power to we will need a megaphone, not a microphone. Tomorrow we will need a megaphone because they will be more powerful, and sooner or later we should start today, not tomorrow, against these oppressions. And we don't write about these pressures. Authoritarians will keep still. If we don't write about the pressure of the governments, they will keep writing, showing their pink-colored words as a reality. But when we write, we are writing about the truth.
For sure.
And so we are in a way, we are a mirror to society. We have the responsibility to keep writing, and that way, And if you ask me, systems like Turkey don't survive just only pressure. They have other kinds of repressions. For example, they separate individuals from each other. They separate the society into different parts with polarization,
Yeah.
and if we don't find bridge among us, then our power will be more and more losing,
For
and
sure.
we cannot find the right way to go on, and our way of writing is for the people who don't have microphone in their hands. We
Yeah.
are in a way the voice of the silenced people, silenced, for example, silenced women, homeless women, um, anywhere in the streets, a migrant, and LGBT people, because these special groups don't have enough capability in the sphere of the media to raise their demands and also rights to be heard, to be written in whole of the world. And literature, poetry, journalism, I think, when oppressive regimes are involved, these are just not creative fields for us. They're also acts of resistance, because we keep surviving with our words. We
Yeah.
don't have any other people. When I was in prison, I read a book from John Berger, and he said, in places, in locations like prison, all we have are just words. So if we have only words, we should be careful and also very, very attentive to use them at each opportunity to make an reaction against the corruption and the injustices and the unlawless of the government and the
Yeah.
states.
It's
But of course, we are fearing. We are human, and we have a hurt in our chest. We are human. We are fearing sometimes, but we prefer to not surrender to fears.
It's
We are
actually-
fighting with fears, and in that way, we become when I stay, when I don't write, when I don't speak today, tomorrow. Maybe you know, in each country, when the pressure occurs, firstly, journalists, writers, poets, storytellers are speaking. And if we stay silent, tomorrow we will find nobody to speak, to write, and to react
Absolutely.
against the corruption of the government. We exist through our words, and we have the responsibility to break the silence. And as an individual person, I am trying to do this with my words, both in prison and now in exile.
It's thanks to your courage, really, that
Yeah.
I found out personally what's going on in the region, because the narrative the government was selling us was that there are terrorists there and they're raising a ruckus and the government needs to send in the military. And through your stories, we found out that they were actually putting the villagers back handcuffed and telling them you will feel the power of the Turk. And, thanks to your courage, we can know about what's happening. And, so many of your colleagues are actually deciding to shut up instead of speak up. So they're starting to not write about these issues. And so your courage, I think, should be an example, not to just journalists in Turkey, but to the whole world, really, to kind of take up that courage and somehow keep pushing for the reality of those people, the voiceless, for their stories to come out. So in that front, I just want to ask a follow-up of what really felt you supported throughout this process. Because I remember when you were first disappeared, there was a campaign for "Where is Nedim Turfent" on social media, where people were asking your name. And from that point on, how did you feel that the support in Turkey and outside of Turkey helped you keep going on and keep doing your job and keep speaking up?
And as you told in the biography, when I reported about the torture of Turkish police against Kurdish workers, Turkish police threatened me with death, and they tried to find me, to kill me. And when I was detained, they brought me to a hill in the mountain, and they started to open fire into the air. They discussed among each other whether to kill me or not, and I was here. I was hearing their discussion about killing me or not, and they're also beating me, torturing me. But I'm not just talking. I'm talking about the process of killing, whether they kill me or not. And I thought that those moments are my last minutes in the world. Just I'm trying all my life past like a film in my mind, and I'm following their mimics, their jest, to find a clue that I will survive this process. And after some time, the phone of their chef was rang, and he answered the phone. He said, okay, we will not kill him. We will bring him to the police headquarters. And then they brought me to the police center. And one of the police showed me some message on social media in English, Kurdish, Turkish, and they said, where is Nedim Turfent? The police will kill Nedim. Let's be voice of Nedim. And they showed me this message. And after some time, I thought that, yes, there is an international campaign launched for me, and I will survive this process. And after 2 hours, the chef came to me and he said, Nedim, there is a massive oppression on us. Everybody is talking about you and your story and your torture, and nobody will torture anybody here in this police center. And then they arrested me, but to be arrested in that process, in a way, was a rescue for me, because they would kill me. And when they sent me in prison, I thought that I was so lucky to be in prison.
See, this is a really important message for all of us to, I think, reflect on. The fact that sometimes we feel powerless when we are far away from these contexts. I personally can't return to Turkey for 7 years now, and often feel like there's more that I should be doing or that I could be doing. And in a way, there's a lot of organizations who support journalists, who support writers like PEN International, like ECPMF and others. And in a way, by supporting them, you also support these people who are brave enough, who have the strength and the courage to fight for those whose voices, whose stories are not being heard. And there is actually a lot you can do to support them by supporting the organizations, but also by writing letters to them, tweeting about them. And sometimes that actually results in better conditions. Sometimes that also means that when you have to leave the country, you are faced with the love that you deserve, in a sense, to get also the publishing rights that you deserve. And you know, this is so important for us to not just look at where we are, but also defend freedoms at the local level, where people are actually fighting to defend them. And we'll come back to you as well, Nedim. And I want to move to you, Fatoumata. Thank you for being so patient. There's in our conversations about this panel before, you mentioned that Senegal is a very young country, and half the population is under 19, which I found is an astonishing figure, actually. You said, we are called a democracy in a very external way, and that people are protesting in the streets. They sense that they have been deceived. Can you tell us more about that and what you see as the way out? Perhaps if this is a sense of being deceived leading to organized action, and how does colonization's echoes affect this process? And how do we, especially as young people, decolonize ourselves?
Thank you very much, Ege, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and I will speak few words in French as well. Merci beaucoup de m'avoir invité aujourd'hui. Je suis très content d'être avec vous. So, as you said, I come from Senegal, which is a very young country, as you were saying. In terms of the age of the population that are under 19. And I would really like to start by kind of defining and going at the roots of what democracy means, what it should mean, actually, when I kind of cite Abraham Lincoln saying democracy, it's power of the people, by the people, and for the people. So it really means that in theory, people, and especially young people in African countries, in these countries it is very very young population, they should be aware of the power that they hold in theory, because they are the one that elect the leaders, and it really means that they have the legitimacy, and they also should have the complete awareness of what it entails to be a democracy. It's not about just, and that's why I was saying Senegal and a lot of African countries as well are depicted as being democratic, which is true in a kind of procedural and external way, because they are kind of organizing elections, transparent elections, etc., without fraud. But when you look at the kind of a bit deeply, you know that people, when they elect the leaders, they do it in a kind of without having all the information that they would need to have to do informed choices in terms of voting. So from my writing kind of hat, and also public policy and economics, what I really call on people is to really know the power that they have, by being in a kind of a democracy, and also knowing that they I don't know how to say it, but they really should be kind of conscious and aware that they have the power, even if they are often deceived by the people that they elect. As you are saying, in Senegal, people start to go protesting in the street, and women as well, and young people, because they are really deceived by what they are seeing from the government that they have elected, not only the current government, but also the previous government. So with this knowing, I think it's also important that people get more and more involved in politics, not to give their power to external people, but also know that if you want to change a system, you have to be in some way in the system as well. So being a bit more political, a bit more involved beyond activism, etc., to kind of inform more the public choices, public policies, etc., doing influencing, lobbying, etc. So yeah, that's really an important also aspect of what I was saying.
Okay, I wanted to follow up with that question, because you also mentioned that somehow systems of oppression prioritize profit over human dignity. And you said environment, women's rights, colonization, and wealth inequality are connected. Could you expand on that a bit? Also about the effect of you being a writer, and how you connect people based on this commonality of issues.
Yeah, so maybe I can start by telling a bit more about how I became a writer.
Yes, please.
So
yeah.
I published my first novel, which is Le Silence du Totem, so talking about restitution of piece of art, all these artifacts, these statues, etc., that hold primarily kind of a spiritual meaning for the people that have created it, in terms of masks, statues, etc., in the villages. And these artifacts were stolen by the colonizer, and kind of today they are exposed in museums in Paris, or in Germany, or in the UK, etc. So it really came from also from my point of view of a willingness and a desire to tell the story of what happened during the colonization, which I couldn't find when I was going to the museums of kind of ancient art, etc. The story of this theft, this taking was not well told in the museum. And I came from there, and it was kind of also a metaphor of what is happening today in the South, in terms of colonization, but also in terms of extracting an extractive kind of way of building the economy, and also in terms of women's rights, because as you may know, before the colonization in Africa, they were not kind of patriarchal, like toxic masculinities in Africa. But when the colonization came, and also with religion, etc., it became a kind of pretext and justification for erasing women that was previously well well, that have access to the economy, etc., that hold also power, like status of power, etc. But when the colonizers came, it kind of changed everything, because they were talking only to the men, to the masculine leaders, etc. So also as a woman, as a black woman today, and as a writer, I would really like to kind of contribute to the decolonization of minds as well, and also to the kind of compensation of all what the colonization and the aftermath of colonization also brought to Africa in terms of environmental degradation, because I also come from a small city which was kind of created by the French people when they kind of created a mining company, starting to extract the phosphate, etc. So it is really all this kind of historical also perspective that I have that bring me to being a writer, and also fighting against the extracting also nature of what we see today, and how to really compensate this.
That's so important also for us. For example, in Turkey, I didn't grow up knowing too much about Senegal, but somehow through meeting you, I know a bit more about it, and because of what you're telling, the stories that you're talking about, and somehow if we read our peers' works and their stories, we learn a lot more about the actual country as well, and the context in which people live there. So that's a good doorway into learning also about what's going on, and decolonize our own minds if we are ignorant, as I was before, and also still am about many contexts. So just one last question. We were reading Allah Abdel Fattah, who's recently released from prison in Egypt. He said in his recent piece for The Guardian that I need to think differently, to think less locally, because I'm going to be in the UK, and the deadlock in the world right now is not resolvable from a place like Egypt. Though I think there is a benefit in having a perspective from a place like Egypt, because there's a deadlock of imagination in the global north, and a deadlock in the possibility of action in the global south. How do you reckon this deadlock can be lifted, and what are some of the ways you're exploring to do so between France and Senegal?
Absolutely. So I perfectly understand what he means when saying perhaps he would not be able to do as much as he would want to if he stayed in Egypt, etc. Because I could perhaps say the same thing, because I came from Senegal, and when I came to France, I could not only study, but also I got a different perspective, and also a different perspective in terms of understanding more what people, what my family, what the Senegalese people and African people in general also had to live with their history. And I think that today we kind of observe really kind of what we call in economy the limits to growth today. Meaning that perhaps the West, and it is really kind of with a lot of humility also from my own perspective, because I have kids that are born in France, etc. And it's really about attaining perhaps a certain limit, and also attaining a need to kind of bring more perspective from the South, and moving away from a taking mentality to perhaps more learning and listening, and also acknowledging that the South has something to also learn to the North.
Sure.
After years of colonization and extraction, etc. Maybe today it is time to kind of meet at the middle, and learn from what Africa and the South, Turkey and other countries as well has to learn to the West in terms of ways of living, in terms of hospitality, in terms of really relating to others. So I really think that today us living in the South or coming from the South, we also have to really bring what we really are from like deep inside us, and bringing also to where we live today in the North, and see how because in Africa we really say that the North is doing a lot, but here we are sensing and feeling also a lot. So maybe it is time to kind of reconcile the feeling, the emotions, etc., with the ability to do.
For sure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot we can learn also from the fact that wealth inequality is now hitting many countries also in the north, and they're feeling that their labor is being extracted and their life conditions are getting worse. So they have a lot to learn, I think, from the south
Yes,
in that
absolutely,
sense
yeah.
of inequality. These last few questions, as we have 10 minutes left, I sort of want to ask them openly, but please feel free to answer if you would like. The first one is, I read this James Baldwin quote, which I'm sure lots of you know, where he says, the world is really kept together by the love and passion of very few people. And I'm wondering, is it still the love and passion of very few people to you, or do you feel like more people are actually showing up, more young voices especially around the world, and somehow is it lonely work to stand up for something and to speak up for something? Or what are your honest reflections, I wonder, about, yeah, how do you find the relation with this? Do you feel like it's very few of us out there?
Maybe I can start. I think it's not few of us, and maybe I can talk about the power of kindness, because with everything that I and my family have been through, I can still talk about kindness. And maybe like I can give an example of today and yesterday, and honestly, I felt this in the Philippines pavilion. I mentioned that there, but I would love to mention it again, because honestly, like what I felt there was a safe space. And because of these safe spaces where we feel heard and seen, this is what gives us the courage to speak up. And maybe something that I really like want to question ourselves, like, are we truly like, I always talk about self-liberation, how important it is to decolonize ourselves from within, because true freedom starts within. And this is something that I'm very proud of, about my half Ukrainian and half Palestinian side, in which people, even when they're getting killed, when they're like being stripped away from their lands, their homes, and everything, one thing that no one is able to take away from them is their spirit and their inner freedom. And this is what threatens the oppressors, this power to imagine, power to dream, and power to remember their stories. So I would like to say that, like this, to me, it's the combination of collectiveness, people coming together and people standing in solidarity together. This is where we get our energy and we get this willing to fight and speak up. And at the same time, this attitude that no one can take our spirit away. So this is maybe a reflection for everyone, if we are truly liberated from within to speak up. Because when we say that no one is free until everyone is free, we're not meaning and talking only about the people who are being oppressed and genocided. We're talking about everyone. So are you truly free to speak up, or are we being afraid of losing some connections or our jobs? And this is a very important question, because when there is oppression somewhere, we are all being oppressed and morally tested as well. So I truly believe there's still kindness in the world.
This is really great to think also, because we're always reading in the news how the world is going more autocratic and how there's bad news all around, but somehow there's more and more voices rising against it, and their resilience, as you said, with very little at hand, despite going through a genocide, despite going through prison, despite going through torture, to have that courage to speak up should really give us all hope in a way, and to look for a brighter future. There is hope, and there is hope in the youth as well. And maybe I'll go back to you, Nedim, quickly. I want to ask you about this study that was done in Turkey, which was really interesting to me. It was done in the 70s and later in the 90s to look at two different generations in their outlook on the world vis-a-vis their own lives. While the older generation mostly saw their own fate intrinsically tied with the well-being of the country's fate and that of the world, the younger, more recent generation's answers seem to be of the view that they'll be fine, but the world was headed for the worst. This pointed, in a way, this decoupling of one's own fate from that of his and her community, pointed to the hyper-individualism that's spread across society. And it was clear to me that we as young people have to reconcile this well-being of the self with our wider community if we are to stand a chance against the enormity of these challenges. And I want to ask you, how do you reckon with this hyper-individualization coupled with hyper-consumerism on top when considering these problems that are shared across borders? And how can we act in a way that we are on the same boat? And what role does literature, journalism, and storytelling play on that?
according to my humble opinion, above all else, we human beings are social, and we are the part of society. We cannot separate ourselves from the society, from the community, from environment, from nature. So let's think who can live alone in the nature or in the society. We are the part of it. So if today the authoritarian regime, for example, every other day they put our earth, put our countries into more darkness, more pressure, more injustices, how can I find welfare here? How can I find freedom here? So if I think individually, I will also at the same time think for the society, because if the rights and freedoms of all of us together are being loosened every other day, as an individual person, I cannot find my welfare there. Yes, of course, every person is unique, and everybody has a unique journey for her or his life. But when we form bridges among all different kinds of society and countries, in this way we can support and, of course, rescue our future together. Because we all, whether we like it or not, we live in the same boat. It's our world, and so for that truth, we should be, of course, careful about what we write, what we think, what we say, and not only over consumption, but at the same time, individualization are connected to each other, because they feed each other as a symbiotical way, I can say. So they survive hand in hand, shoulder in shoulder, over consumption and individualization. For that reason, I think we should form a good story that slow down this overconsumption, to show this to all the society, to show them that who are playing ostrich, put their hands into the sand like an ostrich. We should be careful about this, and this is exactly what is the space when storytelling, when writing, when speaking start to react, because our act of writing and speaking, I think, is the protest against this oppression, this overconsumption, this culture or culturelessness. So our protest of writing is at the same time, it is the cry of nature. It is the protest of ants, protest of water, protest of mountains, protest of a homeless person, protest of an LGBT people, protest of, for example, a migrant. So we are not alone. We are the part. We are. It's a whole. Nature, society, ecological sphere, and also economy. All these spheres are a whole. It's a big puzzle, and we should be careful about our words, because, as I said, we are coming out from our words. So, with these words, with storytelling, with this artistic act, we can say stop to this unright path toward the future, because when you see that there is a dark path towards the future of the earth in almost all the countries, in some countries it's more oppressive, but in some countries it's a fake democracy. So against all this fakeness of earth, we should use our pen and words. We should form bridge among us, And to sum up, I think our works should bring societies together. And finally, I am saying, for example, sometimes I am asking myself, where did you find or where this hope come from? I think hope comes from the truth. For example, today, from Turkey, Senegal, Ukraine, Palestine, and Kurdistan, for young people are talking about their common future, about the society, about the environment. So this is the hope.
Yeah.
If we grow up together, then hope exists.
Beautifully said, yeah. And they try to atomize us anyway. Yeah. They try to say, oh, he's Kurdish, he's Turkish, he's from LGBTQ, he's this. But actually, our common future is now at risk. And we should also be mindful of that we shouldn't put ourselves in such a special, different than everybody else, but start looking like we are all sharing the same. Despite different contexts, we are all sharing the same loss of future prospects. And with that, I want to also invite you for our networking reception to follow after this. We will be discussing how we can support these young voices emerging from different parts of the world and how these stories need to be told more, gates opened for them to tell their stories, because a lot of young people don't find the spots in the main media networks, in the main publishers. It's really hard for them to get themselves heard. But the more that they are heard, the more they connect, and they connect the people around them, as we see in various youth protests around the world. So thank you all for coming and listening, and I hope you can join us for the networking.
And if I can take 1 minute,
yes, please. Yeah.
Yes. If I can take 1 minute, because I promised a friend that I will bring his message here to Frankfurt. So I asked my friend from Gaza, what is his message here? Because I believe it's about collectiveness. It's not only about me coming here talking about myself, but rather bringing the stories of my people with me. And this friend, I met him online. We've been talking the past couple of months. And since the time I met him, we would talk about hope. And during the genocide, how we can find hope. We would send to each other pictures of sunsets and sunrises and stars, because we would say that Israeli occupation could kill our people, but they can never kill the stars, they can never kill the waves, the sunsets and the sunrises. And I asked him what his message to you. And he said, my message to the world is too short and simple. Keep your humanity alive. Do not look away from others' suffering. We're all humans before we have any different nationalities. The world let the genocide happen to my small beloved city, and I lost all the places I got used to go to. I've lost 60 of my dear friends, and last one was just 3 days ago, Saleh al-Jafarawi. I don't need sympathy. All I want is to be all together, to spread love, peace, humanity, freedom, to speak up for the oppressed people until oppression ends and the oppressed people become free. And as we both used to say, we always have hope, and no one is free until everyone is free. So free Ukraine, free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, and freedom to every oppressed human. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Well done.